This security footage captures the last known moments of Siobhan Murphy. On the night of November 14, 2005, she walks unsteadily down the 7th floor corridor of a luxury hotel, leaning against the wall for support in what appears to be a state of intoxication. A successful corporate lawyer from Dublin, she was in town for what her firm understood to be a critical business merger. Trailing just a few paces behind her is a heavily tattooed man who checked in under a false name. At 11:47 p.m., the camera records them both turning a corner, out of sight. The next morning, at approximately 11 a.m., a housekeeper entered room 712, Siobhan's room, for routine cleaning. The room was found to be in perfect order. The bed was made, personal items were arranged neatly on the vanity, and a suitcase was closed on the luggage rack. Nothing appeared to be missing except the guest herself. Following hotel procedure, management was notified. They attempted to call the room phone periodically throughout the afternoon with no response. By 6 p.m., with no sign of Siobhan Murphy, the hotel's head of security placed a call to the police to file a missing persons report. Officers were dispatched to the hotel and conducted a formal search of her room. Inside her handbag, they located her passport, her wallet containing credit cards and cash, and a cell phone with a dead battery. Her luggage was still packed. There were no signs of a struggle or forced entry. The investigation immediately turned to the man seen walking behind her on the security tape, who was registered to room 718. But when officers used a master key to enter his room, they found it had been cleared of all personal belongings. It was completely empty, except for a single photograph, left face down on the bedside table. When the crime scene technician turned over the photograph found in room 718, it confirmed the investigators' immediate fear. It was a candid picture of Siobhan Murphy, taken from a distance, seemingly without her knowledge. The mystery of the 7th floor was now officially a missing persons case with signs of stalking. Using the passport left in her room, police quickly built a profile of the victim. Siobhan Murphy was 34 years old, a successful corporate lawyer from Dublin, Ireland, with an impressive career and no criminal record. But when detectives contacted her firm, the case took its first bizarre turn. Her employers were adamant that Siobhan was not supposed to be in the city. She was scheduled to be in Singapore, representing them in a multi-million-dollar merger. This discrepancy prompted a deeper look into her recent activities. Financial records revealed another anomaly. 3 days before she checked into the hotel, Siobhan had withdrawn $15,000 in cash from her personal bank account. The large, untraceable sum was inconsistent with a corporate-funded business trip and suggested she had a purpose for being in the city that she had kept secret. While Siobhan's life became more complicated, the identity of the man on the security footage remained a blank slate. He checked in using a fake ID under the name Travis Bodin, which led nowhere. Photos of his distinctive tattoos were sent to international law enforcement agencies, who confirmed the patterns were consistent with a violent Eastern European prison gang. DNA evidence was carefully collected from a drinking glass left in his room's trash bin. While the background check on Siobhan raised questions about her motives, the DNA sample was the investigators' only hope of putting a real name to the phantom seen following her down the hall. They had no idea the results would connect their case to an unsolved crime thousands of miles away. The DNA results from the drinking glass in room 718 provided the first concrete lead in the case. The sample was a match to an unknown profile collected from an unsolved assault case in Berlin 3 years prior. More startling, however, was the second match found in the prison system database. The man known as Travis Bodin was a former cellmate of Siobhan's brother, a man who had reportedly died of an illness in prison 2 years ago. The connection was too direct to be a coincidence. Simultaneously, the hotel's internal investigation confirmed that the 47-minute security camera outage on the 7th floor was not a malfunction. The system had been manually shut down from a maintenance panel in the hotel's sub-basement, an area accessible only to senior staff. Just as investigators were processing this information, the case broke wide open. A credit card belonging to Siobhan was used to purchase a small amount of fuel at a gas station 40 miles north of the city, near a remote coastal landmark known as the Keeper's Watch. A search was immediately launched. In a thicket of brush near the abandoned lighthouse, search teams discovered Siobhan's jacket, a pair of her shoes, and her hotel keycard. The discovery made headlines, with media outlets speculating that Siobhan had either taken her own life or fled and was living off-grid. But the forensics lab told a different story. Analysis of the fibers and soil on the jacket and shoes indicated they had only been exposed to the coastal environment for less than 24 hours. Siobhan had been missing for 7 days. The items had been planted. The promising lead was a dead end, a deliberate act of deception designed to send the investigation in the wrong direction. The police were now facing the grim reality that they were not just searching for a missing person, but contending with an organized and calculating opponent who was always one step ahead. With the lighthouse lead exposed as a fabrication, the investigation turned back to the hotel itself. The focus was now on the manual override of the security system and the certainty that someone with insider knowledge was involved. Days later, a call came through to the police department's anonymous tip line. The caller, a man whose voice was distorted, gave a simple, cryptic message. "You're looking in all the wrong places. Look under the hotel." The tip prompted detectives to pull decades-old city blueprints from the municipal archives. They made a stunning discovery: a network of abandoned subway tunnels, sealed off to the public in the 1970s after a flood, ran directly beneath the hotel. A forgotten maintenance passage connected the hotel's sub-basement to the main tunnel line. This discovery gave investigators a viable theory for how two people could exit a lockdown building without being seen. They immediately began re-interviewing every hotel employee who worked the night behind the deaths. Siobhan vanished, this time focusing on who had access to the sub-basement. A night janitor, who had been on his break during the initial canvass, came forward. His statement changed the course of the investigation. He confirmed seeing Siobhan and the tattooed man in the basement service elevator at approximately 2:30 a.m., squarely within the 47-minute window of the security outage. The janitor was certain about what he saw. Siobhan Murphy was not being forced. There was no struggle. He told investigators they were talking quietly. She was crying. But that was not the most critical part of his testimony. The two were not alone. The janitor positively identified a third individual in the elevator with them, the hotel's head of security, the very same man who had placed the official call to police to report her missing. With the lighthouse lead exposed as a fabrication, the investigation turned back to the hotel itself. The focus was now on the manual override of the security system and the certainty that someone with insider knowledge was involved. Days later, a call came through to the police department's anonymous tip line. The caller, a man whose voice was distorted, gave a simple cryptic message: "You're looking in all the wrong places. Look under the hotel." The tip prompted detectives to pull decades-old city blueprints from the municipal archives. They made a stunning discovery: a network of abandoned subway tunnels, sealed off to the public in the 1970s after a flood, ran directly beneath the hotel. A forgotten maintenance passage connected the hotel's sub-basement to the main tunnel line. This discovery gave investigators a viable theory for how two people could exit a lockdown building without being seen. They immediately began re-interviewing every hotel employee who worked the nights Siobhan vanished, this time focusing on who had access to the sub-basement. A night janitor, who had been on his break during the initial canvass, came forward. His statement changed the course of the investigation. He confirmed seeing Siobhan and the tattooed man in the basement service elevator at approximately 2:30 a.m., squarely within the 47-minute window of the security outage. The janitor was certain about what he saw. Siobhan Murphy was not being forced. There was no struggle. He told investigators they were talking quietly. She was crying. But that was not the most critical part of his testimony. The two were not alone. The janitor positively identified a third individual in the elevator with them: the hotel's head of security, the very same man who had placed the official call to police to report her missing. The identification of the head of security as a suspect sent a shockwave through the investigation. He was immediately brought into custody for questioning, but upon arrival, he requested a lawyer and refused to answer any questions. Before local police could file charges, 2 agents from the U.S. Marshals Service arrived at the precinct, presented federal warrants, and took control of the entire investigation. The local department was ordered to stand down. It was the marshals who finally explained the true nature of the case. They revealed that Siobhan's brother was, in fact, alive. His death in prison 2 years prior had been staged by the federal government to place him in the witness protection program after he testified against a powerful international trafficking ring. The man known as Travis Bodian was formally identified as Colt Rayburn, a dishonorably discharged ex-military operative. The trafficking ring had hired Rayburn to locate Siobhan, believing her to be the key to luring her brother out of hiding. Siobhan Murphy was not a random target. She was leverage. Her secret trip to the city and the $15,000 cash withdrawal were no longer a mystery, but likely the desperate actions of a woman being blackmailed. According to federal intelligence, Rayburn's job was simply to find her and report her location back to the ring. But it appeared that somewhere along the way, he had a change of heart. All evidence suggested that on the night of November 14th, Colt Rayburn was not kidnapping Siobhan. He was trying to help her escape. The local police had been investigating a missing person, but the U.S. Marshals were dealing with a casualty in a long-running war. The question now was, had Rayburn's rescue attempt succeeded, or had they both been eliminated by the enemy? Federal agents began a forensic analysis of Colt Rayburn's known associates and digital footprint. They discovered he had been using a disposable burner phone, and its last signal pinged from a cell tower covering a desolate stretch of coastline 60 miles north of the city. The signal led a federal tactical team to an abandoned fishing warehouse. After making a forced entry, they found Siobhan Murphy inside. She was dehydrated and suffering from exposure, but was alive. During her debriefing, Siobhan provided the final pieces of the puzzle. She confirmed that the hotel's head of security was working for the trafficking ring and had cornered her that night, threatening her and her brother. It was at that moment that Colt Rayburn intervened. He revealed he knew about the plot and told her the only way out was through the tunnels. He led her to the sub-basement, where the security chief, realizing his plan had been exposed, helped them escape to cover his own involvement. Rayburn moved Siobhan through the tunnel system and eventually to the warehouse, which he believed was a secure location. 3 days later, operatives from the ring tracked them down. Siobhan told agents she hid in a small maintenance crawl space while she heard a brief but violent shootout. Rayburn was killed. His body was later found by federal agents, buried in a shallow grave a quarter-mile from the warehouse. After the operatives left, the corrupt security chief, now in a panic, drove to the coast and planted Siobhan's belongings near the lighthouse to stage a suicide and end the police investigation. With Siobhan safe, the security chief was arrested at an international airport, attempting to flee the country, and the city moved to permanently seal the tunnel entrance beneath the hotel with concrete. The arrest of the security chief and the rescue of Siobhan Murphy officially closed the corridor case. For the federal government, the primary objectives were met. The trafficking ring's operation was disrupted, and their protected witness, Siobhan's brother, was successfully relocated to a new, secure identity. Siobhan returned to Dublin, refusing all media requests, and her life after the incident remains private. Colt Rayburn was buried in a Texas cemetery with no official honors. While the main crime was solved, the case file is filled with unanswered questions that prevent the story from ever feeling truly complete. Investigators never determined why Siobhan flew to the city instead of Singapore. Was she knowingly walking into a trap, or was she coerced from the very beginning? The purpose of the $15,000 cash withdrawal was never explained, and the money was never recovered. Furthermore, a second, unidentified DNA profile was recovered from Colt Rayburn's room, but it never matched anyone in any database. And perhaps the most debated question is that of Rayburn's true motive. Was his attempt to save Siobhan a final act of redemption, or was it part of a failed double-cross against his employers? The full truth of his intentions was buried with him. Today, the luxury hotel is still fully operational, but the 7th floor is permanently closed, now used only for storage. The hotel refuses to comment on the events of 2005, but staff and local residents have kept the story alive. They report that the new upgraded security system occasionally malfunctions. The cameras on the 7th floor corridor will sometimes freeze for exactly 47 minutes, and the timestamp is always the same, 11:47 p.m. The corridor case left a quiet but lasting mark. For the family, Siobhan Murphy and her brother were given a second chance at safety, but were forced to live under the constant shadow of a powerful criminal network. The public perception of the case evolved from a simple missing persons story into a complex conspiracy, blurring the lines between victim, perpetrator, and hero. Officially, the case is considered solved, but with its loose ends, unidentified DNA, and the lingering mystery of Colt Rayburn's heart, It remains a story where the final chapter feels as though it has yet to be written.